a young noblewoman who dedicated her life to the less fortunate. She financially supported many families and is now known as the patroness of the poor and indebted. You might already know who I'm talking about, right? If you thought of Saint Hedwig, you're correct. Here are 11 interesting facts about her. 11. Noble origin. Saint Hedwig was born in 1174 into a noble family. She was the daughter of Duke Berthold IV of Morania and Agnes of Rochlitz. From birth, Hedwig was destined for a life of privilege and splendor, living amidst the luxury characteristic of medieval nobility. Despite her wealthy and privileged environment, Hedwig's life was marked by remarkable simplicity and humility. From a young age, she showed a propensity for spirituality and religious life. These virtues, uncommon in a child of her social status, indicated a unique character and a disposition for devotion and service. The luxury surrounding her did not overshadow her simplicity of spirit. Hedwig managed to balance material wealth with profound humility, using her privileged position not for selfish purposes but for the well-being of others. Her compassionate heart led her to direct her efforts and resources to help the less fortunate, building hospitals, schools, churches, and convents. Saint Hedwig's noble origin did not steer her away from the path of faith and charity. On the contrary, she used her status to promote justice and social welfare, advocating for the marginalized and indebted. If you're not subscribed to the channel yet, subscribe to avoid missing any interesting facts about the saints. 10. Marriage and family. At the age of 12, Saint Hedwig married Henry I, Prince of Silesia, also known as Henry the Bearded. The marriage, typical of the political alliances of the time, united two powerful noble families and played a significant role in Hedwig's life, shaping her future both as a wife and a mother. Hedwig and Henry had 6 children, a considerable number reflecting the expectations of the time in terms of inheritance and family continuity. However, Hedwig's family life was marked by personal tragedies, as 2 of her children died prematurely. As a wife, Hedwig showed remarkable dedication to Henry, supporting him in both political and spiritual matters. Together, they founded several religious and charitable institutions, including hospitals, convents, and churches. Hedwig's influence on Henry was significant, especially in his advocacy for fairer and more compassionate policies for the people. In addition to her responsibilities as a wife, Hedwig played an active role in the education and upbringing of her children. She strove to instill in them the same values of faith, humility, and charity that she herself followed. Hedwig's presence in her children's lives ensured they received an education that emphasized both practical skills and moral and spiritual formation. Hedwig's family life was not without its challenges, but her devotion to her family and husband never wavered. After Henry's death, Hedwig intensified her dedication to religious life and charity, finding solace in her faith and continuing to serve those in need. Leave your prayer requests in the comments so that Saint Hedwig may intercede for them before God. 9. Religious dedication. After the devastating loss of her husband, Henry I, and 2 of her children, Saint Hedwig found in faith the comfort and strength needed to continue her journey. This profound personal pain did not lead her to despair but rather to an even greater dedication to the cause of the less fortunate. She channeled her sadness and suffering into acts of charity and religious devotion, becoming an exemplary figure of compassion and service to others. Hedwig used her considerable fortune selflessly, financing the construction of hospitals, schools, churches, and convents. Her vision was to create a legacy of mercy and education that could transform lives and offer hope to the marginalized. The hospitals she founded provided essential medical care to many who otherwise would not have access to treatment. These institutions were true refuges of healing and support for the sick and needy. In addition to hospitals, Hedwig also invested in education, establishing schools that offered both academic and moral instruction. She firmly believed that education was a powerful tool for breaking the cycle of poverty and empowering young people to build a better future. The churches and convents she helped found were not only places of worship but also community centers where values of faith, solidarity, and mutual assistance were promoted. Hedwig also stood out for her direct support to the indebted and imprisoned. In an era when debt could lead to imprisonment, she frequently paid off prisoners' debts, offering them a new chance in life. Her intervention brought relief and hope to many desperate families, highlighting her deep empathy and commitment to social justice. Saint Hedwig's religious dedication was not just a personal spiritual practice but a movement of social transformation. Her faith inspired her to act, and her actions left a lasting impact on the community. Hedwig exemplified the Christian belief that true devotion to God is manifested in love and service to others. 8. Protector of the indebted. Saint Hedwig is widely venerated as the protector of the indebted, a figure of hope and compassion for those facing financial difficulties. In her time, the inability to pay debts was a serious issue that often led to the imprisonment of debtors, destroying families and condemning many to a life of misery and despair. Sensitive to social injustices and the hardships of the less fortunate, Hedwig dedicated a significant portion of her efforts and resources to alleviating the suffering of the indebted. She not only offered moral and spiritual support but also took concrete actions to resolve their financial problems. Hedwig used her considerable wealth to pay off the debts of those who were imprisoned, freeing them from jail and offering them a new opportunity to rebuild their lives. This practice of paying others' debts was uncommon at the time and highlighted Hedwig as an extraordinarily generous and compassionate figure. Her act of freeing indebted prisoners went beyond a simple gesture of charity. It represented a significant intervention in a system that often perpetuated poverty and injustice. By settling these debts, Hedwig not only restored the physical freedom of individuals but also returned dignity and hope to them and their families. In addition to paying debts, Hedwig provided advice and guidance to help people avoid future financial difficulties. Her holistic and compassionate approach to addressing others' financial problems was innovative and profoundly effective, providing immediate relief and helping to prevent recurrence. Saint Hedwig's devotion to the indebted reflected her deep empathy and commitment to social justice. Her belief was that everyone deserved a second chance, regardless of their circumstances. This vision of justice and mercy guided her actions and left a lasting impact on the community. 7. Life of prayer and fasting. Saint Hedwig is remembered not only for her charitable actions and commitment to social justice but also for her profound spiritual life marked by intense prayer and rigorous fasting. Her dedication to these religious practices was an expression of her total surrender to God and her pursuit of a life of holiness. Prayer occupied a central place in Hedwig's life. She devoted long hours of both day and night to communicating with God, seeking guidance, strength, and comfort. Through prayer, Hedwig cultivated an intimate and personal relationship with the divine, which gave her the peace and courage needed to face life's challenges and fulfill her mission of serving others. In addition to prayer, Hedwig practiced rigorous fasting, often consuming only dried vegetables, bread, and water. These fasts were not merely ascetic practices but profound acts of devotion and sacrifice. For Hedwig, fasting was a form of spiritual purification and solidarity with the poor and needy, who often went hungry. Through fasting, she symbolically shared in the hardships of the less fortunate and strengthened her own spiritual discipline. Hedwig's fasts also reflected her humility and detachment from material pleasures. By renouncing food, she demonstrated her commitment to living a simple and devoted life, free from worldly distractions and temptations. This simplicity of life allowed her to focus more fully on her faith and service to others. The combination of prayer and fasting in Hedwig's life not only nourished her own spirituality but also served as a powerful testimony to those around her. Her devotion inspired others to follow her example of deep faith and selfless service. Hedwig showed that true strength and peace come from a life of spiritual discipline and total surrender to God. 6. Miracles. Among the miracles attributed to her, notable events include the transformation of water into wine, which are seen as manifestations of her closeness to God and her ability to intercede for those in need. The story of Saint Hedwig, a 13th-century Polish noblewoman, is filled with accounts of prodigies that occurred during her life and after her death. She is known for her generosity towards the poor and needy, and many of the miracles attributed to her are related to her help for the indebted and the helpless. The transformation of water into wine is one of the most cited miracles in her biography. This episode is remembered as a sign of her divine intercession, showing that her faith and piety were so profound that God manifested His power through her. In addition to this specific miracle, other accounts describe miraculous healings, miraculous provisions of food and resources, and divine interventions in desperate situations. These events are considered evidence of Saint Hedwig's holiness and her ability to channel divine power to help those who called for her assistance. 5. Political influence. Saint Hedwig not only stood out for her miracles and piety but also for her significant political influence during her lifetime. As the wife of the Prince of Silesia, she did not hesitate to intervene in the principality's politics to promote fairer and more compassionate laws for the benefit of the people. Hedwig was known for using her privileged position to advocate for the less fortunate and the needy. She often advised and persuaded her husband, the prince, to make decisions that benefited the poor, the sick, and the oppressed. Her political influence was based on her deep Christian faith and her commitment to the principles of charity and social justice. In addition to her personal charitable actions, such as building hospitals and orphanages, Saint Hedwig sought to influence public policies in the principality to ensure that laws and regulations reflected Christian values of compassion and solidarity. She was an active voice on issues related to resource distribution, care for the poor, and measures to alleviate the suffering of the disadvantaged. Her role as a political advisor was not merely an extension of her duties as a noble but an expression of her deep religious devotion and commitment to serving others. 4. Vow of Chastity. At the age of 32, after the death of her husband, Saint Hedwig decided to take a vow of chastity, marking a new phase in her life dedicated to spirituality and religious service. After the death of the Prince of Silesia, Hedwig found refuge at the Trzebnica monastery, where her own daughter, Gertrude, was the superior. This period of her life is seen as a time of deep introspection and spiritual renewal for Saint Hedwig. By taking a vow of chastity, she committed herself to dedicating her life entirely to God, renouncing earthly ties to focus entirely on spiritual life and Christian charity. At the Trzebnica monastery, Hedwig not only found a sanctuary of peace and contemplation but also continued her work of charity and assistance to those in need. Her presence at the monastery was not merely an act of withdrawing from the secular world but an extension of her previous commitment to social justice and care for the less fortunate. During her years at the monastery, Saint Hedwig continued to be a spiritual and moral influence, not only for the nuns living with her but also for the entire surrounding community. Her life of devotion and her vow of chastity are remembered as examples of personal renunciation in the name of faith and service to God. 3. Female education. At the Kitzingen Monastery, Saint Hedwig had the opportunity to receive an exceptional education for her time, standing out not only for her religious vows but also for her comprehensive intellectual and cultural training. During her time at the monastery, she dedicated herself to studying the Bible, gaining a profound knowledge of the sacred scriptures that would strengthen her spiritually throughout her life. In addition to religious study, Hedwig also had access to a broad education that included the arts, sciences, and practical skills such as embroidery and music. This multifaceted education reflects not only the monastery's commitment to women's education but also the value placed on knowledge and skills that could enrich their spiritual and practical lives. The monastery provided Saint Hedwig with an environment where she could not only deepen her faith but also develop her intellectual and artistic abilities. This educational context shaped not only her understanding of theology and religious sciences but also prepared her to play an active role in the religious and social life of her time. 2. Death. Saint Hedwig passed away on October 15, 1243. She died of natural causes, having lived a life marked by religious devotion, charity, and service to those in need. Her death occurred at the Trzebnica monastery, where she spent her last years in prayer and contemplation, after her husband's death and her taking of the vow of chastity. 1. Canonization. Saint Hedwig was canonized by Pope Clement IV on March 26, 1267, officially recognized by the Catholic Church as a saint. Her canonization is a testament to the enduring impact of her life of holiness, charity, and service to the needy. Saint Hedwig's feast day is celebrated on October 16 each year, a date dedicated to her memory and her influence as an example of Christian virtue. She is especially revered as the patroness of the poor and indebted, due to her unwavering generosity and commitment to helping those facing financial and social difficulties. Over the centuries, Saint Hedwig has been invoked as an intercessor by the faithful facing economic hardships, seeking her help to overcome financial challenges and find solutions to problems related to debt and material needs. We've reached the end of another story full of curiosities. Don't forget to leave in the comments which saint's curiosities you would like to see on the channel. And until the next story.